Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another top 10, this time doing top 10 comic book villains. So most of my comic talk has been more about the the movies, but this time I'm going to talk about the comic book villains as they are across all media. So comics, cartoons, movies. But who are my top 10 villains? And we're gonna stick to just like true through and through villains. Now, caveat: both Spider-Man and Batman's Rogues Gallery could have their own top 10 list of bad guys at some point because they have tons. So I tried to limit the number of ones to make it not just a list of those two, and really get a flavor of comic book villains across the board that I like. But there, you are going to see some Batman and Spider-Man villains. So my number 10 is the Mandarin. Now, the Mandarin is probably the most obscure one that I like. Um, I was a fan of Iron Man comics before the Iron Man movie. It was actually Marvel vs. Capcom that got me into Iron Man. And then he showed up in the Spider-Man animated show, and I instantly fell in love with him and wanted to learn more about him. And what's interesting is he's very technological based, and the Mandarin is very much more, I don't want to, if you would call it mystical based, but it's just the kind of, he deals with powers that you can't explain, and Iron Man is all about explaining everything and working with things you can understand because he's super smart. And so there's this constant a battle of like technology versus faith, different things, and so it really plays out well, and is a very good contrast for Iron Man, because Iron Man villains, like all the other villains, are just other smart guys in suits. There are other guys that technological, like they're like living nanites, or there's someone like MODOK that can control machines with his mind, and stuff like that. But Whiplash, all those kind of like characters that are just Iron Man clones, whereas the Mandarin really was something different, and he gave Iron Man a challenge and gave depth to his character, and so I really enjoyed that. Number 9 is Ultron. Now, Ultron, I really like this character. I like the background of him being, made by Hank Pym, and the burden that causes on Hank. That this was, there's been different things. It was Hank Pym, and then it was Hank Pym and Iron Man, and then we saw in the movie it was Iron Man and Banner, the Hulk. But this was always a character designed for good, but goes corrupt, really kind of delving into the bad AI, and proving to be quite a force. And of course, most people dislike the movie. I really liked his performance in the movie. I thought that was a perfect Ultron, and I've always liked him better than Brainiac. Brainiac is a character that is OP to be able to be up against Superman, except for when he's fighting the Justice League, and characters like Green Arrow and Batman are successfully fighting him. So I've never, but Ultron to me fits much better. Number 8, one of my favorite Spider-Man villains is Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock. Not only is he cool and he's formidable with all his different limbs, which, Spider-Man being a spider, it has a good contrast there. And it's something, because he has so many appendages, he's always keeping, even with the spider sense, Spider-Man's on his toes because he can react and attack in so many different ways that, Spider-Man can only dodge so much. Even though he knows it's coming, he can only dodge so much. But what makes him interesting is he's also a brilliant scientist and someone who has a relationship with Peter Parker. And so that dynamic makes him a very well-rounded villain. It makes him a villain that is uniquely able to tax Spider-Man on all his rounds. So intellectually and physically in prowess. And so I think that makes him a great villain and one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. Now, number 7 is Mr. Freeze. Now, Mr. Freeze is a Batman villain, and a Batman villain that I greatly love because he's got the tragic backstory, and it's just that cold personality that Mr. Freeze brings. There are a lot of Batman villains that are a lot stronger than Mr. Freeze, and yet he goes toe-to-toe with the Bat. Now, he's got super strength, but he's not an amazing martial artist or anything like that. You know, he's got a freezing, but once again, intellectually smart, motivated by a tragic backstory. He's a well-rounded character. He's not just, oh wow, this character happens to be a bad guy and he got powers and now we got to fight him. No, he has character and depth, and so that's why I love him. Number 6, Thanos. Now, I will admit, I wasn't a big Thanos fan of the comics. The whole being in love with death was weird. However, the MCU made me a fan of Thanos. And, Darkseid wipes. Thanos is a Darkseid clone, but he's so much better. And what the MCU has made him into is so much better in as far as just enjoyability, that character, that motivation, the depth that they gave him there. So that really puts Thanos up on my list. Number 5, we're going to go with my favorite Spider-Man villain, the Green Goblin. He's got enhanced abilities like Spider-Man, but he's also gone crazy. It's at the extent that it made him crazy, and I have always loved like this constant battle. But once again, it flips a lot of things, because we see a ton of rich tech giant billionaires become Iron Man, Batman, the Green Arrow, like all these super rich billionaires becoming superheroes. This is one that becomes a supervillain, which is much more believable. And then the relationship that he has with Peter being like the son he wishes he had, because it's his son's best friend, but he values him more than his own son. And then when the Green Goblin becomes the son and it's Peter's best friend and all that goes into that, holding Peter responsible for, in multiple iterations, for the death of his father, the Green Goblin has a lot of depth. But who's going to be better than the Green Goblin? Number 4, the Joker. The Joker is the ultimate Batman villain. He's the other side of the coin. He is chaos. He is wackiness. And he's got tons of different backstories, but it all kind of boils down to this. He's usually, crime boss, has this accident, gets turned into the Joker, but he cares more about the joke. And I'm really picky about how he's presented in movies, because a lot of times they want the Joker to be this extreme and dark, and what makes the Joker dark is that he's having a blast. He's doing unspeakable things and enjoying it and making jokes about it, which is why I think in live action, the 89 Batman does him the best. When he's doing the buzzer in the hand and squirting for the flower and stuff like that, that is the Joker. And this idea now that he has to be some psychopath with a extreme intelligence and planning and stuff to get, no, he's supposed to be chaotic so that Batman can't necessarily always predict what he's going to do, but he's in service of the joke. His main goal is that above whatever his criminal activity is, and that's what makes him so dangerous. And I think of the episode of the animated series where the Joker gets in a guy's car and he's like, we're gonna be buddies now, and he's doing that. He's just crazy. They have the one where they think Batman was killed, and the Joker brings him there, and he's gonna kill that guy for killing Batman. The craziness of the Joker, Mark Hamill's Joker, really to me captures the character, and so I'm a big fan of the Joker, but I'm not a big fan of how he's been portrayed recently. I really don't like how they're starting to show him. But he's actually not my top Batman character. I think he is the ultimate Batman villain. However, I happen to like the Riddler better, and that's my number 3 is the Riddler. The Riddler to me is a fun and outrageous villain that I just enjoy, and I really think that the Riddler is one that often gets overlooked, but his intellect and the way he really brings out the detective portion of Batman really to me is a wonderful villain to have. And I like that. I like that a lot of Batman's villains are both psychological as well as crazy or different things. But to me, he's the ultimate villain from that universe. Now, number 2. Who can be number 2? That is Magneto. Magneto has such deep character growth. He's a Holocaust survivor. He took that and he was like, never again will I be oppressed like that. He's a mutant, and he sees mutants being oppressed, and he takes up his righteous crusade, but he's doing it in a way that is wrong, is evil. The good guys have to stop him, even though they don't necessarily disagree with him. He's not evil. He's not evil in take over the world. He's evil in that he's taking things a step too far. And I think it's very applicable to today, because today we see a lot of social injustices, and we see people take up the mantles of protesting against those, and they take it too far. When you're hurting the public, when you're defaming property, you're doing all these things in your causes, you're being a Magneto. And so not only is this a character that helps you to humanize these people, but it also teaches you why those courses of action are not right. And so to me, he's such a pivotal and important character for story arc wise, for yous to be exposed to. Number 1, though, Doctor Doom, the greatest comic book villain of all time. Dr. Victor Von Doom is an amazing character. Not only is he ruler of his own country, so they give a reason of why he doesn't go to prison. He goes back home. They beat him back home. He rivals Iron Man in technology. He rivals Reed Richards in intelligence. It takes the whole Fantastic Four to dogpile him, to take him down, to work as a team. And the funny thing is, though, he wants to take over the world because he believes he can save it. And in some respects, they have shown in the comics, he's not wrong. His rule is one of the only ways that mankind can survive. He is better, and I think he appeals to a lot of people in that we always feel like, man, if people would just do things my way, a lot of these problems would go away. But yet none of us are qualified to lead or direct, and so he's in that constant foible of he thinks he knows best, he thinks he can do better. He's not necessarily evil, he just thinks that his way is the best for everyone, and he tries to enforce that. Once again, doesn't that sound like society right now? Everyone on Twitter thinks their way's the best, and if everybody else on Twitter would just accept it and adopt it, then everyone would be better. Victor Von Doom, greatest comic book villain of all time. Plus the cheese of it all, like he's just so great. I love this guy. I love his character. He is so many cliches, and he just, studier of everything. Once again, in every other universe, he has such a backstory that would make him a hero. So to have him a villain really works. Now, for my secret number 11, I have completely stayed away from anti-heroes in this list. And one that started out as a villain that became an anti-hero is Venom. Venom is a very cool concept. Carnage, I think, is kind of a knockoff of Venom, so I don't hold it as in high regard. But Venom, definitely a cool character, definitely something interesting that Spider-Man brought in. But ultimately, because he's more of an anti-hero, he didn't make the list. All right, that's my list. There are thousands of comic book villains out there. What are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments below. Have a good day.